Welcome to Behind the Swing, the show that takes a deep dive look beyond the swing so you can get the most out of your game.
Hello everybody and welcome to Behind the Swing. I'm absolutely thrilled to be starting my podcast, and the reason why I'm making it is a simple reason really. As a golfer myself and a golf coach for the last 25 years, and I've played golf for 38 years. You know, I was coached technically as a young lad growing up, overcoached, didn't really develop any skills, and just spent 20 years working on my backswing, which never really helped me hit the ball any better. So I've decided after all these years to go on a little bit of a journey with the podcast and invite some super guests onto the show who can share with you their stories of trials and tribulations as coaches and players, what they've been through, what they've found that could help you potentially get more out of your game. And in golf, we sort of have player A versus player B. And player A is the golfer, the guy or the girl that stands and holds the golf club perfect, that aims square, has the perfect swing, but the ball doesn't go where they want it to go. And then we've got sort of player B who sort of grips it a little bit different, swings the club, as we call it, unorthodox, with some idiosyncrasies, and got full control over the ball. Now, when I question my players, my golfers, or it's a common theme in the golf world, golf industry, to hear that most people would sacrifice that for a better looking golf swing and a better game. So that is really quite alarming. And that's the challenge that I face every day as a golf coach when golfers come into my world to get better. Are they really open to exploring the possibilities that are available to them so they can improve? And, you know, often we're quite blocked in our approach to how we could learn. And might be a different way that we could play this game. So today's guest, Kendal McWade, needs no introduction at all. He's a golf coach of over 40 years of experience who's dedicated his life to finding ways to help you improve. And he's invented a few swing aids, as they say, to make the game seem a little bit more simpler, to show you the task of hitting a golf ball straight forwards can be a lot simpler than you could imagine. And you know, are you willing to drop all the information that you've learned over the years to simplify the task? And that's a real challenge. So I really hope you'll join me on this journey with this podcast, and I hope you'll enjoy today's show with Kendal McWade. And please feel free to reach out to me and give me all the feedback you want about my show and about my guests and what you feel about your game. And join me on this journey, and hopefully it's going to start to revolutionize your game and your enjoyment with golf. So welcome to Behind the Swing, and here is Kendal McWade. Kendal, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark.
Kendal, I'm going to get straight to the heart of things. You've been coaching for many years. In your experience, why do you think so many golfers struggle to improve despite having access to abundance of information and coaching?
I think you've hit it on the head there. It's because they've got abundance of information and technology. I think that's just about sums up why we fail to learn something. Because this is not an information transfer. This is an experiential thing. So you can't verbalize that. You can't write it down. You can't show it. You can't really see what learning is when it's going on. And I think that's the issue. I would say in direct relation to the more knowledge that I had, the poorer I could play. So the more I knew, the less I could do. And then technology's come along, and I think there's some great technology. But the information that I gathered up as a young professional had a detrimental effect on my ability to do something. I was trying to put structure around something that wasn't structured. It's like that genius that you see on the football pitch or the golf course, and they can't verbalize that. They can't put it down in words. They try their best sometimes, but usually that causes more problems because we can't explain how we know how to balance. We can't explain when we turn the wheel in the car, but we know how to do it. So we just trust the skill that we have to navigate our way through the world, whether it's golf or anything else. So I think one of the biggest challenges we've had is being able to use that information, that knowledge effectively. Because, as Mike Hebron always says, does it support learning? And that's a great question. So who can answer that? If you asked a golfer who had come along for the first lesson, they could probably tell you a lot of the stuff they were told to do. I had to stand like this and hold it like this and swing like this and do this with my arm and this with my head and this with my hips and this with my shoulder. They could probably, someone who is attentive as a first lesson could probably tell us, relate that back. But that's not learning. To me, that's just a surface. The information is the kind of surface, but we need to break through that. But they couldn't tell us how they ride a bike. They couldn't tell us how they tie their shoelaces. Couldn't tell us how they walk or balance. But they can tell us what the golf lesson was about. So it's almost like knowledge is the booby prize in a weird way. This is, as I said to you, almost like the turning the clock back to us being babies and infants, that we had no information to learn all the incredible skills that we have, the ones that get us through life. Never mind golf. We're talking about walking and talking and problem solving. And so it's a very complex thing, Mark, but I don't think the answer in the future is going to be more information or more technology. Because from what I've seen in 50 years is golfers that are making exactly the same inappropriate, ineffective movements that they were in the 1980s. The top of the game has changed, but it hasn't changed in a way that we now all swing it like Tom Watson or Adam Scott. The world number one swings it as idiosyncratically as anyone that's probably been as good as he is. So it's not what we can see that makes a golf swing work. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah. And, it's really interesting that, when somebody wins on the tour on a Monday through Instagram or all the channels, if it's a swing in favor, that swing will be reposted and be chosen as a model. But the world number one swing is never chosen as a model for coaches to give to their pupils, is it? So it's really interesting insight. But Kendal, what about the golfer that goes to the driving range every day, who loves the game, who secretly won't tell you they want to get better, and they grab their bucket of balls, they put them on the mat, and within 20 minutes, they've hit the 60 balls and they're going away from the range feeling despondent, depressed, clueless. They're investing in lessons. They're on the TrackMan. They're on YouTube. What are they not understanding about what you just said there? What don't they learn about? Obviously, we've got different levels of the game. So beginners are coming, more advanced players. But how do you tell them that there's an opportunity for them to get better? What can they do differently when they go to the range? What are they missing?
Well, I think we don't need to look any further than the mirror, Mark, probably, to be that very guy who's stood on the range and walked off frustrated. But we've also walked off thinking we found a secret, haven't we, only to discover that it wasn't a secret. It disappeared. So it's not just them, it's all of us. We're all victims of this. But I think if we really cut to the chase, it would be about asking the question about what is it they believe would help them improve the game. Because golf is just a game of skill. That's all it is. It's a game of shots, and shots are skills. When I mean skill, it's an intention. So you have to have an intention and be able to carry out that intention for it to be deemed a skill. Just having a swish at the ball and it goes in the hole does not mean that you are skillful. There's something about the intention. So what do the people out there believe are the skills they need to learn or improve to help them play better? So they're actually pretty simple, but I think if you ask that question to the club golfer, they wouldn't give you the answer that they need to be giving you to truly get to the heart of how you get better at this game. So they would probably say something like, well, you need to practice. So obviously. But what are you practicing? Well, I'm practicing trying to improve my swing. And so it would go on, the conversation would go on, and said, because I've always loved the way Tiger Woods swung the club, and I've got his pictures in my room, and I've watched all these videos, and I'm trying to swing it like him, and it's great. And as long as there's I look like Tiger Woods swing competition, then okay. But this is actually about golf. This is about learning to do what Tiger could do with a golf club, not how he looked. So the people have got to learn to use these tools in a more effective way. And there's not that much that they have to learn, and that they have to learn to swing the club in certain directions. So they have to have directional control over the force that they're applying, whether it's to the right, to the left, forward, up, down, whatever, it doesn't matter. But they have to be able to do that. They have to be able to swing the club in a certain direction. They have to be able to orientate the face in relation to that direction. And they need to be able to strike the ball and interact the club with the ground in certain ways. And they need to apply different forces. If they can learn to do those things, then they can't help but play better golf. But that's not what people do. They go and they try and make sure that their feet, hips and shoulders are square, they grip it perfectly, etc., etc., etc. But it's almost in hope that that will somehow produce a golf club that swings in an appropriate manner, that is delivered in an appropriate way, rather than, I mean, as ridiculous as it sounds, with somebody who's never played, giving them a golf club and just asking them to brush the grass at that spot there. So what we've done at that point is given them a very clear task and asked them to have a go. What's interesting about that, when you've stepped back and you've kind of let the pupil just get on with it, there'll be, for a lot of people, there'll be a lot of failure. So they won't be able to brush the grass, or they won't be able to brush it in the correct spot. But isn't that expected for a huge amount of people? It's a bit like picking up any new endeavour. Are you expecting to be able to do it right away? Of course not. So what you end up doing, it's an interesting concept, and whether it's in Norway or Scotland or anywhere in the world, when babies are learning to talk, they do a thing called babbling, and I'm not sure how that translates, but we've all heard it. We've heard the baby making noises, and it's all of a sudden discovered it can make noises, and it can be very, very annoying when the baby's screaming away and babbling away. So that's called babbling, and it's got a purpose, but it seems to be completely random. So they're screaming, they're screeching, they're babbling, they're making all these weird noises, but ultimately what they're doing is they're trying to eventually be able to make the noise that their parents are making, to be able to communicate, and eventually they incredibly manage to join all these weird positions of their tongue and their lips and their mouth, and they say mama or dada. Dada's hoping it's dada first, mama's hoping it's mama first, but they all of a sudden make this noise that makes sense. But they couldn't get to that point without babbling, which was making no sense. And none of that was seen as failure. So I would suggest, it might be a more effective way, and I have no proof of this, except it's the way that human beings tend to go on with stuff. And it might be more effective to let golfers do what I would consider motor babbling, motor being a movement, and just babble, just try it. It doesn't matter if it's correlate or not, just have a go, which might be try and brush that piece of grass, and then let the process start. And then you might offer some options about how they might hold it. But I would definitely be reticent to try and directly tell them that this is how you hold the club, this is how you stand, and this, because to me, we're missing the point, and we're missing out that babbling bit, that learning to walk by falling, learning to ride the bike by getting off balance and falling and hurting yourself quite often. We're missing almost out on that point by saying that if you do this correctly at the beginning, you'll get better at it. It's not what I see. I see guys who look like golfers when they hold it and they stand until they move, and then you can see that they have no skill to be able to control the golf club and influence the critical factors. The direction the club's swinging, the face's orientation to that, the amount of force, and of course be able to strike the ball, but being able to strike the ball will happen. And I think irrespective of how poor your technique is in relation to the task, most people eventually learn to make contact with the ball. Because their brain's incredible. It just helps you. So it's a long-winded answer, Mark, and it's probably not answered the question because I'm not sure it's not easy to answer it. But I think the way we've structured coaching is completely and utterly counterintuitive to learning. That's a big statement, but that's what I believe. And I've had 40 years or 45 years of experience in that, and I've experienced it myself in my own game. So I feel as if I'm reasonably justified in saying it, but yeah, I think we're heading round the wrong path when it comes to learning.
Yeah, I think most golfers would agree if they were truly honest with you that they're not thinking the same way as what you've just described, Kendal. So why is that? Why are golfers going to the driving range and not looking at the game like that? And they're standing there wiring and firing the same old patterns to produce the same result that they've always got, and they're not willing to look at another way. What's made people golfers that way?
We have.
Who's we?
The culture, the PGAs of the world. YouTube is now doing it. 10,000 books. We are information rich, but most of us struggle with this game in a way that is astonishing. So it's not their fault. They're victims. If they didn't have a lesson at all and just picked up a book and looked at some YouTube videos about how to learn the game of golf, they would not get what you and I have just discussed there. They wouldn't be able to find that.
Nowhere.
It's like somebody would just say, just pick up the club and try and hit the ball and see what happens, and then see if you can hit it over there and see if you can hit it harder and softer and higher and lower, and you might even be able to make it bend now and then, but just have a go and come back to me in a couple of months.
But Kendal, I meet a lot of those golfers every day, and I've said that a lot, and they'll say, no, just look at my grip, just look at the way I stand. And these are new golfers. No, I've come for this golf lesson for you to tell me how to hold it and stand, but you want me to hit some balls before you tell me how to do it? Yeah. Why are people coming conditioned that way?
Well, they're not coming to you as non-golfers because they wouldn't ask those questions. They wouldn't know. They've been preconditioned by whoever, well-meaning friends, husbands, dads, YouTube, books. Because otherwise they would come along and say, I'm an open book, Mark, what is this about? But the thing is that, and I've been fortunate enough to coach at a reasonably high level at times, and I've always said to the guys that I've worked with that, or asked them the question about, would they give up everything they know about the golf swing technically to be able to have control over the golf ball? And bizarrely, a lot of the guys, and I'm talking about Ryder Cup players, kind of stopped for a second before answering the question. To me, it was like, if somebody had said that to me, it would be like, yes, of course I would. And yet some guys, when asked that question, they kind of look, and there's a little bit of a reflection on their head thinking, would I give up everything I know about the golf swing to have control of the golf ball? I'm not sure. And I think that's what we've created. Because that's like saying, would you give up all the information you've got on walking? Because what information have you got? Oh, that's right, I've got none. So it's easy to give it up. But there's like, we hang on to this trust, don't we, that, well, if I don't know stuff, how can I fix it when it goes wrong? Well, that's like saying, you need a book when you fall to make sure you don't fall again. So unluckily, you're going to fall again. You're going to trip up the stairs, down the stairs, and hopefully you'll get through life without killing yourself. But it's not going to stop because you've got a lot of information about what makes you trip. So to me, we're caught in this cycle that we created, and the pupils are now the victims, aren't they? That, yes, I want you to tell me how to hold it because that's what I believe. I was told that's what the lesson will be like, because I was really nervous about coming. So I asked some friends who played, and they said, "Oh, this is what will happen." I said, "Oh, that's good, that's good. At least I know what to expect." And that's fine, isn't it? But yeah, I think hold the rubber end. That's a good start, I would say. I wouldn't hold the other end. I'd hold the rubber end of the club and hit it with the other end, and maybe that bit of the club, the face. And I know it sounds ridiculous, I'm being a bit frivolous, but I love when Mo Norman said about how he thought about the game. And one of his comments, although some of them are pretty bizarre, but one of them, he said, "I'm just hitting that, pointing at the ball, with that, pointing at the club head, over there. So I just hit that with that over there." And I thought, that's it, Mo. That is it. And if we gave somebody, I think, a golf club that was flat, with no loft, like a driver, a 0-degree driver, although I wouldn't have it designed as 0 degree, but let's say 0-degree driver, and we gave them a tennis ball, and we asked them to hit the tennis ball along the ground 20 metres over there. Now, who needs 10,000 books to have a go? Just have a go. It's like, I don't want to have a go because if I get it wrong at the beginning, it'll be disastrous. I think, no, it won't. Because you're never going to stop the disasters. The disasters are part of the learning process. It's like babies got to get up and fall hundreds and thousands of times to learn how to balance, but it doesn't see that as failure, does it? You couldn't stop it getting up and trying. It was determined to learn to walk, but people are determined not to look stupid. So let's make sure we get the basics right at the beginning. Let's not get the basics right at the beginning. Let's not. And let's develop the true basics, and that is, can we control the golf club and learn to use the tool in a way that is going to allow people to get better, influencing those key factors, and trusting that we're learning machines, we're problem-solving machines, and information is not necessarily what we need. Certainly not the amount of information we've got.
Kendal, there must be a way.
I think there is.
So there must be a way, and that's what I'd hear all the time. So why are golfers, coaches, tour players not getting it? Why are they constantly seeking answers online? Why are they not willing to take that journey, stand on the mat, self-discovery, like you just said, stand there and see if they can brush the grass after the ball, and after 3 or 4 goes, they get the phone out, they turn on YouTube, and they look for a fix. So what's driven that?
Well, I think nowadays that's a modern society thing, isn't it? Everybody's looking for that instant fix. So that's another issue. I suppose in the days when I started out in this game, there was virtually no coaching. But there was a PGA creating this monster. Because I think what it is, I honestly think that's what it is. But I get the problem that the PGA have. I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying I don't think we've done the best job we could have to help people learn the game. But the reason that the game of golf has been coached in the way it is because the PGA had to create a structure so that they could examine young professionals on basically information retention, on lesson structure, on this blah, 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 blah. So they had to do that, because how else could they say, Mark Davis, Kendal McWade, you are good enough to be a PGA Pro? It's very challenging if you're going to base it on exploration, creativity, attention, stuff that you can't see. So I get why they did it, but that doesn't mean it's right. And I would think they would have a huge challenge if somebody said, if a scientist come along and said, this is not conducive to learning. You need to change your whole structure. It would be catastrophic around the world for PGAs to change it, because in the main, the PGAs of the world are all doing the same thing. this is how you coach golf. And it's a very similar pattern. And I would say throughout the world, people are still making the most incredibly poor passes at the golf ball in relation to what they should be. However, lots of people don't. And I think what is interesting, Mark, is I would say that 99% of the guys that I've worked with from tour, none of them had coaching in their formative years. It's right at the beginning, none of them had coached. A lot of them were coached when they became so good that they were being recognised by counties or countries, or they turned pro. That's when the coaching started. That's what I've noticed. So it's back to the Tiger thing, you know, back to the Seve thing, it's back to the Bubba thing, it's back to most of these guys learned the game away from the kind of environment that unfortunately most children now are going to be exposed to. It's almost like just give the kid a 7-iron and make it easy enough that it's doable to some extent. So either a bigger ball or tee the ball up and say, we're just going to go and see what we can make the ball do with this stick. We'll just see what we can we make it go along the ground? Can we make it go up in the air? Can we make it do this? Can we hit it far? Can we hit it short? Let's just go and mess about. But how do you put that in a PGA manual? You can't. So you do it properly. You structure it. And to me, that is at the heart of this. And now we've got a monster that the torrent is going against anyone who's saying, I don't think this is right. There's just this Amazonian river of information flowing and I'm trying to swim upstream, failing miserably. I'm just going downstream slower. So again, I've probably not answered your question, but it's very challenging for people trying to get better. What do they need to do to get better? Well, they need to get better at learning to influence the critical factors. And how do they do that? That's a whole new podcast. But
maybe in this one, Kendal, I'm going to try and get there. So let me summarize a little bit about what you're suggesting here is that we got this wrong. Most people that go to the driving range, their attention is in totally the wrong place. And how they're practicing and playing isn't productive in a way that's going to make them better golfers because they've been taught or they're learning from all the different sources of information that's distracting them from actually what the task of the game is asking them to do. Is that what you're suggesting?
I mean, it's pretty damning words, isn't it? But yeah, I think we got it wrong. I think we have got it wrong.
Wow.
And we have to look at the game of golf in its simplest form, and that is it is a hitting endeavour. And all we're trying to do is apply force on an object. And we are unbelievable at solving problems like that. Human beings would not exist had we not been able to solve problems like that, because we couldn't have lived, we couldn't have eaten, we couldn't have sheltered if we couldn't hit things, kill things, and blah, blah, blah. So we're amazing at problem solving. But nobody starts their coach or their journey in the game with little problems to solve. So we just give a kid or an adult a little problem to solve with a tool that's not too complex and it's not too difficult and it's doable. And they get a little success. It's great. And we start that process of increasing the complexity and the difficulty of the problem they're trying to solve. But it needs to be clear. The problem needs to be clear, or you'll perhaps solve the wrong problem because you thought the problem was X, but it actually was Y. What I mean by that, Mark, is when you look at a nail and you have a hammer, the task is absolutely crystal clear. It doesn't mean you can do it, but it's clear. You can see the nail, you can see the direction it's got to be hit into the wood. You get a hold of the hammer and you deliver the hammer. Now, most people on this planet can solve that problem. And they do it in some pretty weird and wonderful ways, but the reality is that the hammer is traveling the right direction, the hammer head is facing the right direction, and the force is appropriate. Even the most motorically poor individuals around end up being able to solve that problem, and they can put a nail in a piece of wood with a hammer. And they've never read a book about it. They've seen people do it, but that doesn't give you the skill. It just shows you a little bit about what is maybe needed. So we've got to get people back to problem solving, because that is at the heart then of you being willing as a pupil to explore, to try and solve the problem better and stand differently and hold it differently and think, God, that's it. There would be nothing to remember. You don't have to remember anything that you have truly learned. You don't remember the balance, the walking, the car driving, the shoe lace tying. You don't have to wake up and think, if I can just remember that swing thought, everything will be okay. To me, if you're in that bracket, and I have been in that bracket a million times, we are looking in the wrong drawer for our socks, whatever it is we're looking for. So, yeah, that's what I would be advising people to do. Start from that kind of as if we knew nothing. So let's just see what we can make the ball do with this stick.
So how would sort of like a fairly new person to golf, or even a tour player, they're on the range, how do they take that approach and start formulating that into an action?
Well, I had a great lesson with a guy yesterday. I don't coach so much now, but he was recommended, or I was recommended him, which was very nice. He's a 70-year-old guy. He's been scratched for 50 years.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. He's a London guy, but he lives in Scotland for 6 months of the year on the banks of Loch Lomond, and then goes to London for 6 months when the weather's inclement. And he said he had a little bit of an injury. He came back from that injury, and he said his game's an absolute tatter. Okay? And when I asked him what his intention was, what kind of shot he was trying to hit, he said, well, I'm really just trying to work on my rhythm. I said, okay, well, that's fine, but what shot are we trying to hit? He says, well, a draw is what normally comes out. And the more I dug, the more I realised he realised he had lost the essence of the game. And this is a game of shots. I said, so can you show me after 50 years what array of skills you have? Because I would presume, given that you're a very good player, you'll have a pretty big array of skills at your disposal. Well, he had none, because he had lost that, because he was so caught up in making sure his left shoulder was where it should be and his right knee was keeping flexing the backswing, and he was getting this rhythm. This transition was of this silky smooth transition, because that's what always worked. And I said, well, how about we go and just hit some shots? So we literally started by hitting some recovery hooks. So we gave him a constraint, imaginary tree. I said, we're going to hit it with as much shape as we can round this, have a go. So he had a go, and it was reasonable effort, but it wouldn't have recovered him from. And eventually, because the guy's got 50 years experience, he got this. And then he went to the fade, and we load the loft, and I said, we're going to try and recovery slice this round this imaginary tree. That was a real struggle for him, because he wasn't adopting the position that would allow him to deliver the club in the way it needed to deliver, because he was using his old habitual movements to try and solve a problem that wasn't going to be solvable doing that. So he then had to start thinking a little bit clearer about the position he adopted, and he thought, okay. And well, the message he sent me after it was, he can't believe how he ended up going down that road, but he was a victim, wasn't he? I said, this is a game of shots. This is a game of skill. And somebody like you, after 50 years, should be coming to me and saying, well, yeah, I practice Tiger's 9-shot matrix quite often, and I'm pretty good at that, and I've got quite an array of shots round the green. He had none. Because he thought if he fixed what he was doing wrong, they would magically appear. But you've got to try and learn those shots to allow the technique to appear. So the technique is emerging from trying to solve the problem, rather than, if I fix my swing, the skills will appear. No, they won't. Right. And again, looking at the guys on tour, most of the guys I've ever worked with at the top of the game, all I did, literally, Mark, was remind them that it's a game of shots, and started them going back down, saying, show me that shot, show me this shot. And then all of a sudden they'd forgotten about the X, Y, and Z that we're working on in the golf swing. because these guys are amazing at that. Amazing. It's like they've turned their back on their amazing instinct to be able to control the golf ball with an idiosyncratic swing. Their swing, their authentic swing, not some Tiger replica. Their swing, the one that they don't even know why it ended up looking like that, but they don't care because they've got control over the golf ball, and that's what they want. They think if I give them some magic information, they'll have control over the ball. No, no, they won't. So there we go.
I think that's straight to the heart, Kendal. And I think a lot of people, when they listen to that, will have to listen to it again. Because I think in a world saturated with quick tips and one-size-fits-all advice, is the golfer willing to stand back and listen to what you just said and identify what actually works for them? How do we get the golfers that are listening to this and worldwide golfers to really see that when they get to the range, they're firing old patterns and they're accepting that every time? They're not willing to look in a different direction. Why? How can we make them realize? How can we make them see?
I think the very important part of this, and I'm just back from Holland doing a coaching summit with a very good friend, and hopefully somebody will have on the podcast at some point, Stephen Orr. And my 3 days with the coaches there was about, to me, the absolutely critical matter of changing how we introduce people to this game. That was 3 days with guys, some of them exceptionally good players and a huge amount of experience, and coaches saying, guys, we need to rewrite how we introduce people to the game so that we, using a musical analogy, so that we give them the chords that allows them then to play music. Because when you go to learn to play the guitar, you are taught the building blocks that will allow you to play thousands of songs, and you only need 4. You only need 4. And so what are the building blocks for golf, and how do we create an environment that helps people build those chords? Because then they can start making their own songs, can't they?
So are you saying it starts with the way they're being coached, or are you saying it starts with the way they change their behaviors when they go to practice or play golf?
Well, it's hard not to know anything, as we said earlier on. It's hard not to know stuff about the golf swing. If you're coming for a golf lesson, you probably have looked at golf, whether it's on YouTube or whatever, just because you're going to learn a new skill. If I was going to learn how to ski, I'd probably have watched a few videos on skiing before I went for my first attempt at skiing. So you can't help that. The issue is with what they have now built up as a perception of what this golf lesson is going to look like, and then you completely and utterly throw a curveball at them and say, no, that's not how we learn to coach golf here. So that's absolutely key. And the coaching, look, Mark, all the hundreds of thousands of golfers and tens of thousands of golf coaches around the world, nobody is trying to do anything but the best for everybody. We're all trying to help people. And I went down that avenue as a young coach because the avenue I went down as a young coach was the avenue that my profession told me to go down. So I was governed by my 4 years experience under PGA tutelage that said, this is how you coach golf. And why would you doubt it? Because everybody was doing it like that. And now you have to agree that in the main, you'll see a similar stuff from everybody. It's all about the same stuff. So we're entrenched in that culture that is not leading to people being able to play closer to their potential and have more control over the ball this year than I did last year, have more skills this year than I did last year. And next year I'm going to have more skill again because it's fun practicing, trying to make the golf ball do something intentional. And that, going back to my lesson yesterday, that's what I think instilled in that guy more than anything, was it was going to be fun to go and see if he could actually learn to do something with a golf ball.
Mm.
Intentionally, make it do something. I said, because if you can make it do big things, big shapes, then could you see how that might eventually lead to be able to having smaller shapes and eventually different trajectories and so on and so forth. And of course, that fun is also tainted with lots of failure. It's like, it was great, but it didn't happen right away. In fact, the fade was a real struggle. I'm battling and I'm struggling, and therefore I might, as a coach, come in and say, have you looked in that place, or have you looked over there? You might be quite good to consider this. So there may be some guidance there, but it should be fun. We're playing the game for fun, but I don't see much fun in my golf course, I'll tell you what. And I know that. I've been over that shot as a pro, thinking, please God, just let me hit this fairway, honestly. And I'm thinking, I'm supposed to be helping people when I'm dying inside myself. That's why something has to change, because I'm not alone. I'm talking to hundreds of golf coaches and pros a year, and so many of them are exactly the same boat, frustrated beyond belief with their own games, never mind their inability to help others. Because if we can't help ourselves, how could we help others? And that is one of the challenges when you talk to the guys who are amazing at the game. They can't verbalise that. They try, and it's usually just gobbledygook that comes out of their mouth, so it's of no help, because it's not because they don't want to help, but they can't explain. They can't truly explain it. And it's that great comment that Bubba made when he was doing the clinic at Orange County, when somebody in the audience said, how do you hit a draw, Bubba? And Bubba then talked all this nonsense and then finished it off by saying, but I don't think of any of that. He said, it's just a feel. All I have are feels. And therein lies what everybody should have, feels. Obviously, our feels won't be as good as Bubba's with the same array of shots, but they'll be my feels. And nobody can instill your feels. You have to develop your feels. So that comes from time on task. But don't go at the range and start trying to fix your right knee. Go and try and hit some different shots. Go and try and explore. Have some fun. So, yeah. That's the sermon over for today.
Kendal, social media, when I turn it on, it's a lot of tour players frustrated, people who've gone from European Tour to Challenge Tour that you can see that are getting worse and worse, to go into your local driving range of golfers getting worse and worse, leaving despondent. What advice would you give to those golfers, anybody who wants to get better but feels completely frustrated that they can't change anything? What advice would you give to them? What would you tell them? Where do they start?
I'm going to repeat myself, unfortunately, but those guys, again, are in the same boat, isn't it? They've kind of lost touch with what got them where they are. And they probably do, to a large extent, think that the reason I'm as good as I am is because I did practice hard, but I had a great coach. And it's fine. They probably had a great coach. But the best coach that they've got is the guy that they look at in the mirror when they get up in the morning. That should be the best coach. That should be the guy that is in charge to a far larger extent than tends to be. I'll phone my coach, I'm playing badly. Honestly. Like, imagine Lionel Messi phoning his Brazilian coach or Argentinian coach and saying, I'm having a problem with my first touch. Boss, I wonder if I can send you a video, or a joiner bending a nail and thinking I need to get the hammering coach on, or I'm going to lose my job. So I think that they've lost touch with that. So they, as I said to you earlier, that for those guys, most of the time I just go straight to shots again. I just maybe create some constraints, because these guys deep down have got the ability to influence the key factors. If they didn't, they wouldn't be where they are. For a lot of us mere mortals, we are building that awareness and skill to be able to influence those factors, but these guys primarily have got it. And I think the other reality, and it came to all too tragically in the last few weeks when we saw what happened in America, that we, from the outside looking in, think that these guys have arrived. They're playing the game they always dreamed of playing on the stage they always dreamed of playing. But let me tell you, they're not all happy. And I know they're not all happy because I've seen that anger and that frustration. And that's life. We're not going through life every day I'm happy. No, you're not. So you get that, but I think a lot of the kids are dreaming that when they get on that tour and they win those events and they make all this money, that things will all of a sudden be very, very rosy, but they won't. So the guys that are struggling with their games, I would say, just go back to hitting shots. I'm just repeating myself again, but I was fortunate enough to win the first ever Ryder Cup player I worked with, who shall remain nameless, but he played in the Masters, and it was the first time he'd ever seen a video camera on the range. And he said to his caddy at the time, walking down the range, and I think it was a Monday morning, he said, I just don't get that stuff. He said, I would think that could destroy people rather than help people. Now, you can argue whether it did or whether it didn't, but interestingly, that guy went to that stuff about 3 years later, and it did destroy him. Never to be seen again. It's destroyed a lot of people because despite our best efforts, and I had a camera and I was using it because I was trying to identify faults that I needed to identify to help people get better. And that's what the guys on tour, they're exactly the same as the club golfer. But they're missing the point. And the point is, back to, this is a game of shots, this is a game of skill. Let's go back to that. Your ability to do that with a golf ball, to be able to influence it, the trajectory, the shape, the distance, the strike, whatever it is. And these guys are amazing at it. And that can be quite transformative for the tour pro. But you can't just do that with a girl or a guy who doesn't have the skills to be able to influence the club, to be able to influence the ball. So you've got to create a much simpler problem for them to solve, and then start the building blocks. But you and I know they will then say, yeah, but I'm playing tomorrow, or I've got a competition at the weekend. So now we're trying to change, and the old pattern of running won't let the change happen when they step in the first tee. Because it's survival. They've got to get round and not look stupid. So they're not going to try and explore something that Mark and Kendal asked them to do in the range, and they managed to do it after an hour a couple of times. So now what, they go on the golf course and try that? Not a chance. And if they do, the first ball's out of bounds, and they think, oh, I'll do it later. But later never comes.
So it sounds to me like everybody's going in the same direction, but they're just at different stages. From a person on the driving range to a tour player, everybody wants to hit the ball better, hit it straighter, hit it further, but they're just at different stages of the game. So with what you're saying there, tour players with cameras, I walk up and down the range and I see beginners with iPhones attached to golf bags, filming swings and doing the same thing as a tour player. So looking to the future on how we envision improvement and coaching, how can individuals develop themselves better for a more understanding of, to feel like when they do leave the range, they're going in the right direction?
Yeah, it sounds a very negative podcast, this, but it isn't. But I do fear for the future. I am concerned that golfers of the future will, even more so in the past, be inadvertently taken down the wrong road. However, that does not mean that some of them do not kick back, because irrespective of what I've just said, there will be some incredible golfers who will come out. They just do. It's like, in spite of everything, they manage to find a way. Quite often that can be, the wee boy who he kind of listens to you, but he's not really interested in what you're saying. When you turn your back, he just does it his way. And that might get us upset, but in a way it's like, good on you. So you've But if he's got a problem to solve, and maybe you hit that little kid with, I'm not so sure you could solve this. I don't know if you've got the ability to solve this problem or not. But you can have a go, or you can give up. I think if you approach a lot of kids, whatever the country, and said you can give it a go, but I don't think you can. And if you want to give up, it's okay. But Tiger didn't. But it's up to you. You can give up. Sometimes you kind of give a wee poke and they say, well, I'll have a go. So, but you can't ask anybody, you can't look online, you've just got to do it yourself. Mark, I'm almost certain that never in humanity, if we're around for another 10,000 years or whatever it is before we blow ourselves up, we will never, ever make anything as powerful as the thing that sits on top of our shoulder. It's like, it's ridiculous what is going on in that 3 pounds of grey matter. We need to be allowing it a bit more leeway as far as taking charge of just hitting a ball with a stick, for goodness sake. What's the problem? I think one of the issues is the golf clubs do look very strange. They're unusual tools, and the game is, I suppose, a little bit unusual, and the ball's in the ground, but it's primarily played in the air. But once you get your head around the understanding of how the tools and why they're designed like that, how they work and why they're designed like that, then we could start the process of saying, well, I'll try some stuff, But I mean, I don't use TrackMan a lot, but I think when you look at the guys, especially the guys in tour, when they are getting that feedback from TrackMan, they have the ability then to change those numbers because they can influence those critical factors. But most club golfers can't, but they are still being exposed to those numbers, but they can't influence them as easily. So you can understand why the guys in tour are looking at that and say, I just want to know a little bit more because my feeling was X. I've changed the way I delivered the club. I just get some numbers there, it'd be good. And you think, oh, that's interesting. That's quite nice because I'm feeling as though I'm quite in control of moving the club in a more effective way to produce the outcome. So you can see why there's lots of potential benefits there, but I think we're missing the point at the early stages. And for most club golfers, they can't. And the amount of people that I see who are moving the club the same way for a decade, 20 years, is incredible. Despite their best efforts, they still are coming over the top, casting it, holding it open, and that's it. And therefore, habit is very difficult to change, and therefore it would be far easier we just started off on a better footing. And they just, from day one, they were more human, more creative, exploratory problem solvers. I'm going to just see what I can do with this ball, with this club. I'm just going to see what I can make it do. Rather than I'm going to read another book, I'm going to learn more information about ground forces. So I'm not sure that's the way to go. So that would be my advice. But we won't be able to stop them, Mark. That's the problem. We will not be able to because technology is cool.
Yeah. Kendal, that's one of the reasons why I'm starting this podcast and I'm going on this journey to talk to coaches like yourself, because as a golf coach myself, teaching day in, day out, as you say, on the front line and walking up and down the driving ranges and going to golf courses, watching people play, I find it really sad that what I'm seeing is depressing and I feel people's pains. And that's why I'm taking this journey to maybe make a stand against that and to show people that their potential is innate and we can help them improve, and hopefully they'll listen and they'll join us on this journey to their own golfing greatness or their ability to deliver the club better or to stop firing and wiring the same old patterns that they always do to get the same result. And by listening to this podcast today, hopefully they'll stand up and they say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. And they're going to go with a much more clearer intention to a better golf game and a happier life, Kendal. So that's been truly fascinating. Absolutely enjoyed the time with you. And thank you very much for joining my podcast.
My pleasure, Mark. Thank you for asking.
thank you for joining Behind the Swing and listening to Kendal McWade, a true inspirational coach and leader. And I'm really interested in hearing, what do you think about that in relation to your own game? Put your hand on your heart and ask you, how are you developing yourself as a golfer? Is all the time and effort that you've put into listening to all the experts on YouTube and having lessons yourself, is it working out for you? Are you developing the shots that you've always dreamed of playing? Do you have the skills? If you've been playing golf for many years, what skills do you possess? It was interesting listening to Kendall's story of the scratch golfer that had been playing for many years that didn't really have any shots. And do you want that to be you? So I'm going to challenge you. Let me know what you think. How are you as the golfer, and who would you like to become? What behaviors would you like to adopt so you can hit the shots you've always dreamed of? What are you willing to try to become that golfer? Please feel free to give me some feedback on Spotify or iTunes. And also my personal handles for this at Behind the Swing and my own golf coaching site, which is Mark Davis Golf. Thank you for joining me on Behind the Swing. I encourage you to join me on this journey and looking forward to the next episode. See you soon.